Controversial emails. Donald Trump Jr. in the spotlight over a meeting with a Russian lawyer during the campaign. Why he says he did nothing wrong. Healthcare debate. Republican leaders want to hold a vote on their healthcare bill next week, but internal battles could make that difficult.
The bill's changing by the minute. There comes a time you got to fish or cut bait.
Path to sainthood. Pope Francis issues the first big change to the process in centuries.
There is no greater love than this, to lay down your life.
And the beauty of faith. On the feast day of St. Benedict, we look at the father of Western monasticism captured in art. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, July 11th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Donald Trump Jr. releases emails discussing plans to hear damaging information on Hillary Clinton to allegedly aid his father's campaign. It is the latest disclosure to roil the investigation into potential coordination between Trump's campaign and Russia. Correspondent Mark Irons reports from the White House. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. That damaging information was allegedly supposed to be delivered by a Russian lawyer during the 2016 presidential campaign. Donald Trump Jr. says he has nothing to hide, and the president is defending his son as Democrats on Capitol Hill promise an investigation.
Declaring his intent to be totally transparent, today Donald Trump Jr. released what he says is the entire chain of emails with publicist Rob Goldstone, who wanted him to meet with a lawyer from Moscow. Goldstone says that the lawyer offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia. The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Panel says it's a very big deal, and his committee will get to the bottom of it.
What I found really revealing even about the Trump organization's own self-serving explanations is they admit being disappointed in what they got at the meeting. They were hoping for more goods.
But Trump Jr.'s attorney, Alan Futerfuss, describes the June 2016 conversation as much ado about nothing, saying the bottom line is that Trump Jr. did nothing wrong. And in an interview with our Lauren Ashburn yesterday, a White House official dismissed allegations of collusion.
This is the Russia hoax. We have been in office for almost 6 months, and there has not been one iota, not a scintilla of evidence of anything occurring between the Trump administration and any Russian actors.
White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders read a brief statement from the president.
My son is a high-quality person, and I applaud his transparency.
White House spokeswoman Sarah Huckabee Sanders is referring all questions about the Donald Trump Jr. emails to outside lawyers hired by the president's son. Lauren.
Mark, tell us what you know about the Russian lawyer who met with Donald Trump Jr.
She says she had no compromising information on Hillary Clinton to offer and has never worked for the Russian government. She says she doesn't represent anyone other than herself. Lauren.
Correspondent Mark Irons at the White House. Thank you, Mark. The Senate will delay the start of their August vacation. The majority leader says lawmakers need to finish work on legislation. Top on their agenda, replacing Obamacare. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi is here. Good evening, Jason.
Lauren, that's going to be quite a difficult task. They're going to need 50 senators to get on board for this to pass. That's why they're sticking around until August 14th, in part to get that done. Now, today, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he'll unveil the latest Republican version of a health care overhaul this Thursday. That sets us up for a possible vote next week. At least 12 Republicans challenged the first draft. Now, GOP leadership has to negotiate with moderate and conservative Republicans. Democrats are united in opposing the bill.
The problem the Republicans are having with health care is not time, it's the substance of the bill. They can spend 2 more weeks, 2 more months, 2 years. As long as this bill continues to cut taxes on the very wealthy and hurt working Americans, the bill's going to be as unpopular as it is today.
It's time to vote. Just put it out there. Let people offer amendments. Let's just hit it head on. It's not going to It's not going to get any less complex. The Affordable Care Act is not going to get any better.
The White House says they're confident the health care overhaul will pass, but long-serving Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa is pessimistic. He tweeted this weekend that if Republicans don't pass this health care overhaul, they're going to lose their majority. Lauren?
Jason, I spoke to Senator Mike Lee from Utah this morning, who said he even thinks that people should be working through the weekends and not just through the summer. When was the last time this August recess was postponed by these senators?
Back in 1994, and again, the topic at that point, again, was health care. Now, Leader McConnell today is blaming Democrats for stalling tactics. He says they're going to spend this extra 2 weeks confirming more of Donald Trump's appointments, as well as working on the military spending bill.
Correspondent Jason Calvi at the Capitol. Thank you, Jason. President Trump calls a tragic military plane crash in Mississippi heartbreaking. 16 people died when the Marine Corps Reserve plane corkscrewed north of Jackson, ending in a fiery crash. No foul play is suspected. It was the deadliest Marine crash in the U.S. or abroad since 2005. A U.S. soldier is arrested after pledging loyalty to ISIS. The FBI found 34-year-old Sergeant First Class Ikaika Kang in a suburb of Honolulu over the weekend. Kang allegedly gave military documents to people he believed would give them to ISIS.
Why would he do that? You know, he got everything going for him. I just don't understand it.
His father, Clifford Kang, as you just saw, said his son pushed him to study the Quran. The FBI says no documents from the military made it to ISIS. Heavy clashes erupt in Mosul one day after Iraq's prime minister declared victory over ISIS. Iraqi forces backed by the U.S. are launching airstrikes to clear pockets of resistance in the country's second largest city. National security correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the Pentagon. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. The commanding general of the coalition task force, Stephen Townsend, says the fight against ISIS in Mosul is far from over. He said that hard days lie ahead to clear the city from several hundred militants who are still dug in. Today, airstrikes hit Mosul's old city, which is the same scene where the fierce battles last days. General Townsend says there are still a lot of hidden IEDs, a reminder of the dangers Iraqi forces face. I asked the general about how the coalition protects innocent people caught in the crossfire. How do Iraqi troops and coalition forces go about ridding the rest of Mosul from ISIS militants and still protecting those who are being used as human shields?
Protecting civilians is a very high priority concern. As their own forces will risk their own lives to protect Iraqi citizens, and we saw that time and time again. Despite all those efforts, civilians will get caught in the crossfire, civilians will get hurt, civilians will get killed. And that's sad, and it's a unavoidable part of war.
General Townsend says the coalition's victory in Mosul deals a huge blow to ISIS caliphate, but thousands have been killed and nearly 900,000 have been displaced. Iraqis admit a military victory against ISIS won't be enough. In fact, one lawmaker from the Nineveh province, that's the same area where many Christians fled from, says that uprooting ISIS ideology is the key. Lauren?
Why, did the general tell you whether or not the U.S. will remove any of the roughly 5,000 troops from Iraq now that Mosul has been liberated?
Well, Lauren, General Townsend says at this point troop levels will not change in Iraq. He says that American forces have been there in an advisory role and will continue to do so. He says, however, that the Iraqi government and the coalition forces have been in talks about potential permanent presence, but he says they won't hash anything like that out until ISIS is truly defeated. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee at the Pentagon. Thank you, Wyatt. President Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines says a siege by Islamic militants may end in 10 to 15 days. The fighting has killed 381 militants, 90 soldiers and policemen, and 39 civilians. Duterte said Friday he would likely extend 60 days of martial law, which he imposed in May. And he says even if the fighting ends, the ISIS threat will most likely persist. Venezuela's bishops call on President Nicolas Maduro to cancel plans for a new constitution, saying it's illegal. The bishops say Venezuela aims to install military dictatorship, and they said that the July 5th siege of the country's opposition-controlled parliament was a maddening criminal act. President Maduro says that the initiative aims to bring peace to the country. There have been more than 100 days of anti-government protests, and 80 people have died. Pope Francis announces a new way to become a saint. It's the first change to the main sainthood requirements in centuries. Joining us now is Father Sergio Tapia Velasco, a professor of communications at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Welcome to the program, Father.
Hello, Lorraine.
What is this new rule regarding sainthood?
Well, this morning we have this great news that Pope Francis published a new law. It's a motu proprio, a kind of law called for greater love. And in this new law, the Pope is actually expanding the horizon of the way that the Church has to, let's say, to make new saints, in the sense of the canonization path up to this moment had just two main ways or vias for holiness. The classical one was martyrdom, and certainly the second one was heroic virtues. But today the Pope has established, after a 2-year study, that actually there's a third way to become saint in the Catholic Church. And that way is to offer one's life in benefit of others for love, for a greater love.
But
yes?
Isn't this the same as martyrdom?
Well, in a certain sense, it's similar to martyrdom, but actually there's a very important difference, and that is that there is no persecutor. There is no one asking me to give my life in service of others. Instead, it's a personal decision, a free act of will.
This is the first change to the main sainthood requirements in centuries. Why is the Pope making this change now?
Well, I think that the point is that why do we have saints in the Church? We have saints as models of holiness, as models for normal lay people, for we all faithful, that we can imitate Christ in different ways. And the Pope, you remember well, we had this Jubileum for Mercy, and
last year.
And Pope Francis has, yes, last year, and Pope Francis has been constantly speaking about the need to lay down our life in service of others.
Thank you very much, Father Sergio Tapia Velasco, professor of communications at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross.
Thank you.
Coming up, my one-on-one interview with Senator Mike Lee, why he wants to explore the state of families, faith, and charities in America.
These are things that have connected American society in the past, Americans to each other.
And caring for our children with a genetic syndrome. One father tells us how he can relate to the Charlie Gard case. Senator Mike Lee is spearheading the Social Capital Project. That's to improve Americans' social relationships, including families, communities, workplaces, and our religious congregations. Joining us now is Senator Mike Lee of Utah. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
You call this Social Capital Project an agenda of our time. Tell us what the goal is.
Well, Lauren, our government is accustomed to studying all kinds of things that have traditionally been measured by government, things like gross domestic product, how much of gross domestic product is being taken in through the tax system, factors like those, economic factors. We are less accustomed to measuring things that deal with associational life in America, the state of families, of communities, of people interacting through charitable organizations, private foundations, and so forth. These are things that have connected American society in the past, Americans to each other, and have helped lift a lot of people out of poverty and expand America's middle class. And yet we see increasing signs that some of those things are being weakened. We want to take a look at those things.
So do you believe that religion plays a big role or should play a big role in the lives of Americans?
It does, and it should. And the reason we know that, one of the many reasons we know that, is because it's helped a lot of people in the United States. One of the keys to our success going all the way back to the days of the Revolution. Certainly by the time Alexis de Tocqueville visited America in the 1830s to study why it is that the American Revolution had succeeded, or why it was that the American middle class had survived and thrived, had a lot to do with religious belief in America. The fact that people came together with bonds of faith and formed religious communities that expanded their opportunities here in the United States.
Well, the report says that in the early 1970s, nearly 7 in 10 adults in America were members of a church, and today just 55% of adults are. So why is it important for Americans to practice religion? I know you say religion is important, but we're seeing a decline in it.
Well, first of all, we always want to make sure that people have the right to make their own choices. Religious belief, worship, church membership should never be coerced by government. There's nothing the government can or should do to force people into these situations. What we do want is to at least make sure that the government isn't discouraging people from entering into voluntary associations.
Sort of the yin and the yang here is that there are many people who believe, that religion and government should have absolutely nothing to do with each other. So why should the government fund this project?
Well, look, this project isn't about religion per se. It's about associational life as a whole. One of the many factors that are examined have to do with how people interact with their church or whether they interact with it at all. But that's just one of many facets of associational life.
Senator Mike Lee of Utah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
A British court is allowing the parents of 11-month-old Charlie Gard a chance to present fresh evidence that their terminally ill son should receive experimental treatment abroad. But the judge says the evidence has to be new and powerful in order to reverse earlier rulings. Joining us now is Art Estapinen, whose son has a similar rare genetic disease and was the first to receive treatment here in the U.S. You also advised the Gard family. Welcome to our program.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Pleasure to be here.
What did you say to Charlie's parents as someone who has, as a father, gone through this?
Well, when Connie Yates, Charlie's mom, called us, I told her that I was going to connect her with a doctor who could help Charlie Gard, because he was a premier pediatric specialist on myocardial diseases, and he saved my son's life, and I was very optimistic that he will be able to save Charlie Gard.
Tell us about your son's journey.
So my son, on July 26, 2012, he was diagnosed with a very severe muscular genetic disease called TK2 myochondrial DNA depletion syndrome.
Which is a first cousin,
yes,
basically?
It's a first cousin to Charlie Gard in London. And they told us he will not make it. He only has 2 months to live. Take him home and make him feel comfortable.
And how old is he now?
And now he's 6.5 years old. We prayed a lot. He was born on the feast day of Our Lady of Lourdes. So we had plenty of holy water, and we prayed a lot to her, to Pope John II, to Mother Teresa. We called all of the saints.
You pulled in all the big guns, didn't you?
Guns.
Right. Now, when you're, as a Catholic person, talking to them, did you bring up your faith and your religion in trying to comfort them?
Yes, absolutely. I told them, my wife and I are still semi-sane because of our religion. As I mentioned, we pray to our Holy Mother a lot. Mm-hmm. And our son, we called the priest to give him the last rites in November of 2012 because we thought that he wasn't going to be able to make it. But you know what? After the priest, Father Brown from Loyola University there in Maryland, after he finished the anointing of the sick, he opened his eyes. And the father jumped up and he jumped back. And I said, Father, are you okay? He says, yeah, but he was told that
that nothing could happen, just like they were in the UK. And now they have this new political challenge, this court challenge that they have to face. All of this must be affecting you and your wife.
It is terribly. We're in a state of shock, and we're very anguished because the judge and the doctors there have the best medical plan from the 7 leading international myocardial specialists, doctors, and clinicians. And they still say he should die with dignity because he's suffering. Yet his vital signs are perfect. He's not even need an oxygen. He breathes a room air, and he doesn't need, he's not in pain because otherwise his heart rate would be really elevated. Our son had multiple fractures, which we didn't know because he didn't even have the strength to cry. But his heart rate would elevate to 200.
And this was your son?
This was our son.
And so what you're saying is this isn't
Charlie
even
is
close
normal.
to that condition.
Correct. Charlie is, his heart rate is normal. That's how you know that a baby who's intubated is in pain.
Tell me we have only a short amount of time, but tell me your words, what you can say to this family.
What I have told them is that, they need to stay strong. They're very strong folks because you can imagine their doctors are against them, the hospital is against them, the UK legal system and courts are against them. So they're solid people. And I tell them, stay strong for Charlie, because you're not only going to help Charlie, but you're going to help hundreds of other kids around the world. And they know that. And Charlie is a defenseless little baby, but we're working hard to try to see if we choose life, not death.
Thank you so much for joining us with your personal insights. Art Estapanen, your son, and our best to him.
Thank you very much.
Thank
it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Up next, the feast day of Saint Benedict, how he is captured in art. It's the feast day of Saint Benedict. He's the founder of Western monasticism and the subject of a painting at the National Gallery of Art. Joining us now is Jem Sullivan, author of The Beauty of Faith. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Lauren.
We're going to take a look at a picture that's at the National Gallery of Art here in Washington, D.C. Tell us about this miracle of Saint Benedict. It's in a 15th century painting.
So much of what we know about Saint Benedict comes to us from the writings of Pope Gregory the Great. In his dialogues, Pope Gregory tells a story which is depicted in this beautiful 15th century painting. As the story goes, a young boy named Placidus lives in the monastery where Saint Benedict is abbot, and he's sent to the nearby river to fetch water. Of course, the currents are too strong, and he starts to drown.
And we can see that on the right side of the painting. It looks to me like it's almost 2 different paintings.
That's right, but it's really the story, because the abbot Benedict senses that this boy is in danger. And so on the left side of the painting, you see the abbot Benedict sending one of his monks, Maurice, out to rescue the boy. And on the right side, Maurice is rescuing him from the raging waters. Now, when the boy tells the story of his experience, he said that the moment he was pulled out of the water, he felt the abbot Benedict's cloak overshadowing him. So this is why it's considered a miracle of Saint Benedict.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And do you know why the right side is all red and the rest looks like it's nature?
Right, and this is just to give contrast. This is just to give a sense of, movement to the painting, that this is what the story is all about.
Why is Saint Benedict so important in the history of the church?
Saint Benedict wrote a guide for his monks and nuns that became known famously as the Rule of Saint Benedict. And the Rule of Saint Benedict was an important tool, powerful tool in the evangelization of Europe, because the monks and nuns who followed Saint Benedict really evangelized, transformed medieval culture, transformed Europe through prayer, manual labor, their love of learning, and a life of virtue. So they rescued really culture with the light of the gospel, in the same way that this boy is being rescued from the raging waters.
Wow, that just ties it all together, doesn't it? Now, it's always such a pleasure to have you. And I have to tell you, my mother loves these segments.
Thank
so
you.
We'll keep you coming back. Jem Sullivan, author of The Beauty of Faith.
Thank you, Lauren.
He shoots, he scores, he becomes a priest. A former Manchester Union footballer in Northern Ireland has been ordained a Dominican. Father Philip Mulrin began his studies a year after retiring from the game. And he celebrated his first Mass this weekend in his native Belfast. That does it for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly. To all of you around the world, Thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night, and God bless you.